والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أحل الله البيع وحرم الربا. صدق الله العظيم. Continuing our discussion from previous week, we are going to discuss number one, short sales, and inshallah number two, intraday trading. And if there is some time, we'll discuss short-term trading, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. With regards to the basic laws and regulations of trade in Islam, it is important that if I would like to sell something, it is necessary for this sale to be valid, that I am the owner of that asset, of that item, or that good. If I'm selling something that is not in my ownership, then that sale is not valid. So you have a car that is not yours, and you go and sell it to a third party, then obviously that sale is invalid. That is generally called the sale of a fuduli. Fuduli is a person who is not the owner and nor is an agent or a representative of the owner. So this type of sale is not valid until and unless the owner validates it. On the other hand, if there is someone who is not the owner, but he is being authorized by someone else, that also is permitted. So if I have an asset and I authorize Abdullah to sell that commodity on my behalf, it will be permissible for him to sell, and that trade is fine, even though he's not the owner, but he is acting on behalf of the owner because he has the authority and he is the representative of the owner. So this is the first prerequisite, first condition, that the person selling an item has to have it in his ownership. Number two, any item that I need to sell or resell, it is necessary that I have possession of it. Possession, also known as qabda. What is possession exactly? When we speak about possession, one thing that comes to mind is al-qabdu bil barajim, or meaning physical possession. I take it in my control, in my hands. So I buy a bottle of water, I take it and I possess it in my hand, and then thereafter I can resell it to a third party. But possession also means that the method of possession is according to the nature of the item. In every item, it is not possible that I take possession by hand. So I buy a car, and the possession of the car is basically handing over the car keys. So I have been handed over the car documents and the car keys has been handed over to me. That is basically possession. In certain cases, possession also means the elimination of hindrances and obstacles from the side of the seller so that the buyer has the ability to possess the item. So it is also known as takhliya, something called as takhliya in Arabic, which means vacating. So there is a premises, I sold it to you, and I vacate the premises from all my belongings and all types of hindrances. And now it is open for the buyer to take possession. So even though if the buyer hasn't taken possession, this will be regarded as possession being given, because the seller has removed all obstacles and hindrances from the sold commodities, from the sold item, and hence that possession will be regarded to be done. So say, for example, I sold certain items which are inside a box that is locked, a suitcase or a box that is under lock, and I have handed over this suitcase or the box which is locked to the seller, to the buyer, together with the keys. So if the keys are handed over, it is basically akin to possession. Even though he might not have opened it and taken possession of it in his hands physically, but just doing that, that takhliya is also termed as possession. Another form of possession is the transfer of risk or liability. So the object or the sold item before the sale was in the liability or the responsibility of the seller. And as soon as the liability or risk of the item is transferred to the buyer, that's when it is regarded as the possession has been transferred. So there are these different types of possessions. Like I said, the basic maxim and a basic principle is that the method of possession will differ according to the nature of the sold item. Now, in the context of shares, let us look at short selling. Short selling is basically selling something which I do not own. So I do not have anything, but I know that the market is going to go down or is on a negative run. And what I would do is I sell 100 shares of Reliance, say, for example, at 2000. And then once it goes a bit down, say 100 points, and I buy it back for 1900. Ideally, anything that I have, it should be that I should buy it and then I should sell it. But here I'm selling it first and I'm buying it later on. So what is the basic concept behind it is that the broker is lending those shares. The broker lends those shares to you and you trade in that for a couple of hours till sometimes till the end of the day. And then thereafter, you have to return it to them, to the broker. the securities, around 100 securities of Reliance or X company. Now, what is the issue with this? So if you look at it from the Sharia perspective, ulama ikram are unanimous that this is not permissible. Because number one, this is something which is being borrowed by the basically the retailer, the person who wants to sell. He borrows those securities, so he does not become the owner of it. The securities still are in the risk of the buyer. So this guy is not the buyer. It hasn't entered in his ownership. It hasn't entered in his risk or liability, nor has he gained any type of possession, and thereafter he is reselling it. So obviously that is not permissible. Another aspect to this is that when we speak about lending, lending is only permitted in commodities that are zawatul amthal. There are two types of commodities. One is zawatul amthal, wherein the qima or the price, it does not make a difference. So things that are equal, equivalent, and there is no involvement of qima or price. On the other hand, there are certain things that are zawatul qiyam. Here, on the other hand, we have the commodity or the share, which is totally based on price. And the profit is being gained because of the price. And there is a loan involved. So any loan that involves any type of profit, that would also not be permissible. That would also be lead to riba. Another aspect is that the main al-kharaju bil-dhaman is a maxim of Sharia that you cannot benefit from any commodity, any item, until and unless it falls into your domain, your responsibility, or you accept the risk for it as well. So any item, if it perishes, it will perish in your ownership and you will be liable for it. Only then is it permitted for you to take any type of profit or benefit from it. This is a basic maxim or rule of Sharia. So this ruling is also not applicable, or this is not being followed yet. As far as the intraday is concerned, when we buy shares, if you look at the stock exchange, shares or stocks are basically when on the day wherein you buy or you issue the order or the order is executed, that is called the trade date or the transaction date. There are two types of dates. One is the transaction date, and then the second day is called the settlement date. On the trade date, the trade has been initiated by you. And on the settlement date, according to especially SEBI and the Bombay Stock Exchange, the National Stock Exchange, the second date, or T plus one, is also known as T plus one. The first day is the trade date or the transaction date, and the second day after the trade date is the T plus one. That is when the payment on the first day, you made an order, you placed an order, it has been executed. But on the second day, that money is forwarded to the exchange, the stock exchange. And in turn, the seller his account is credited, is debited for the securities, for the shares, to the broker's account. And then thereafter, the broker will forward the securities to your demat account. So all this settlement or the finalization of the trade happens on the second day. And that is why we find that majority of the scholars feel that day trading or intraday is not permissible. Because even though if a person might say that there is a type of ownership of the shares because the transaction has been complete. But on the other hand, because there is no settlement yet, we find that there is no type of possession there. Because possession, when we speak about possession, like we mentioned, is takhliya, is vacating. Vacating means that at least the name of the previous owner has to be eliminated from the stocks and from the shares and the securities. What happens generally, rarely does this occur, that on the second day, on the settlement day, the trade does not go through. Because, for example, if I am selling 100 shares on a trade day, I sold 100 shares of an X company. I am able to make the sale, but on the second day, the broker will see whether I have the securities with me or not. Probably I might have not probably 50 shares. I might not have 100 share. So this is basically something that is going against the command of Sharia, and hence this would not be permissible. However, there are other scholars with other views as well, and we shall discuss it later on, inshallah.